Nadia, you want to sit next to me? No. She said no. I don't want to. I want to sit next to her. I know, I like it. You didn't look at the pin, it was so funny. Well, actually, there are right here. So this one's nice too. Let's see. Well, that would be really good.
Okay. Okay, so we were on page 2, the Maimah Kol Yisrael, and no, I'm sorry, there's more here. Where are all the copies? Should be so many more copies. Anyone know where all the copies are? Yeah. I guess I should put them in this drawer here. It's the one that lost. Let me see. What's this? Okay, Torah Shabbat Peh. Good morning. Bye-bye. Okay, so he's talking about, still in the process of explaining, elaborating on the question. The question is, how could it be that in order to merit Gan Eden, there are many conditions? And there are some neshamas that unfortunately don't merit Gan Eden. In order to merit Chiyas HaMeisim, everybody is part of that process, even though Chiyas HaMeisim is so much greater than Gan Eden. So in the process of explaining it, so in order to appreciate what it means when we say Gan Eden is higher, that Chiyas HaMeisim is higher than Gan Eden, so first he brings out how great Gan Eden is. And after all that, Chiyas HaMeisim is even greater. And what does it say about Gan Eden? That the neshama has to immerse itself in some sort of a, again, it's figuratively speaking, a mikveh, and that is called Nahar Dinur, and that's to prepare it to go to the higher level. And what is the process of this mikveh? It means the neshama has to forget what this world is like, in order to be able to adjust and be able to absorb what that world is like. What does that mean? So we gave the example yesterday with Babli and Rishalmi, that Reb Zera was someone who was one of the greatest Torah leaders in Babli. And then he decided that he's going to relocate to Eretz Yisrael and join the learning in Israel, which is the Gemara Yerushalmi. And the Gemara says that the difference between the two was so vast and so great that he had to fast, according to one opinion, 100 fast days to forget what he learned here in order to be able to adjust to the way he's going to learn there. And we explained it doesn't mean he forgets the information. Chas v'shalom, you're not allowed to forget Torah, and especially do something deliberately to forget it. What it means is that the way of learning, the style of learning, the approach of learning in Yerushalmi was so much on a higher, deeper level that he had to totally, completely let go of the previous approach in order to adjust to the new approach. Normally, it doesn't work that way. Normally, everything you learn and every stage and every sort of step that you make is a stepping stone to the next one. And the next one is a stepping stone to the next level, like when you walk up a staircase. But when the difference and the distance is much greater, it's so different that it's impossible to hold on to where I was before and to connect to where I'm going now. And the only way to do that is to totally let go of my and forget, so to speak, about my previous way of seeing things to go into a new way. I think it's hard to find an example for this because our level of learning and intellectual is just not that deep. But you can think of it as at least on some level, like a person who lived a life for many years, which was not following that Torah, not following mitzvahs. So they come to a point where they're changing. What does changing mean? Keeping Shabbos, keeping kosher, keeping family purity, keeping chinuch. But these are practical things. The difference between before and after is not just practical. It's a whole different way of looking at things. It's a whole different value system. It's a whole different perception of right and wrong, a different perception of moral and immoral, a different perception of how to evaluate things and look at things. So it's a kind of a transition that is not just not do this, but do that. It's letting go of one way of looking at things and taking on a whole new way of looking at life, at the world, at purpose, at the way things happen. Everything changes. It's like that's why very often Torah is compared to light. Torah or. When you turn on the light and you open your eyes and you look around and you see furniture, you see curtains, you see all sorts of interesting things in the room, they weren't created. They were there the whole time. But when the light is off and it's dark, you don't see a thing. When you turn on the light, now you can see it all. So Torah is light, which means Torah gives us a whole new perspective on everything in life. It's not one thing. It's not do this or do that. There's nothing in the world, not a detail in the world that you see it the same way without Torah or the way you see it with Torah. Not the way you look at yourself, not the way you look at marriage, not the way you look at life, not the way you look at children, not the way you look at business, at money, as things that are happening, at peace, at war, everything and anything, any topic you can touch, the Torah has a different perspective, a different way of looking at it. It's almost like looking with a different pair of eyes completely. So basically, if you remember the story, mentioned the story when we were preparing for Shavuos, the story of the Rebbe Rashab, that he once said, "Who wants to join my wagon?" And a chassid was crying, and he said, "Where are the steps to your wagon?" He's speaking in a metaphoric way about Chassidus. So the Rebbe Rashab said, "You're right. You need steps." And what did he say? There are 2 steps to get off the ground and the 2 steps to get in the wagon. In other words, the wagon is very high. You can't get in the wagon unless you let go of the ground. In fact, very often when people are making their decision regarding Yiddishkeit, very often they see the value in Torah, they see the value in mitzvahs, they see the value and the beauty in living the way Torah prescribes. There are difficulties not living that life. The difficulty is letting go of where they're holding on to. They call it sitting on the fence. Sitting on the fence means I'm thinking about that. It looks great, but I'm just not ready to let go of where I was. So, in fact, it says, and that the neshama goes, immerses in a mikveh, because in a sense, that's what the concept of mikveh is all about. A person is tamei, then he becomes tahor. So a person, for example, had contact with a dead body, so he's impure. Now that he's impure, he can't go to the Beis Hamikdash. So he has to go through a process of purification. And part of that process is he immerses in the mikveh, and then he can go into the Beis Hamikdash and everything is. So of course, mikveh is one of the things which we don't understand logically. It's one of the things that are above logic. But one of the concepts of immersing in the water is that in a certain sense, as I'm making a transition from one status to another status, I was one kind of person before, and now I'm a new kind of person. The person goes through a process where for a moment he's gone, non-existent. He's under the water. Yes, he is there under the water, but it means at least consciously, and in our view, he's not here for a moment. And after that, he becomes a whole new person, a person that's tahor, or a non-Jew who becomes a Jew, or any other transition that happens through immersion in mikveh. So it means that's part of the process of letting go where I was before. Like the person who jumps from one step to another step, I let go of the step I was standing on, and now I'm nowhere. I'm not in the new place yet. I'm not in the old place. I'm up in the air. And soon I'll be able to land in the new place. So it means that certain changes require letting go completely where I was in order to be able to enter the new place where I want to go. And that's what happened with Yidden and Mitzrayim. In order to receive the Torah, they had to go out of Mitzrayim, let go completely. And that was the 50 days, the 49 days in the middle. These are the days where they were out of Mitzrayim, but yet they didn't enter. That was sort of the mikveh then. Didn't enter into a relationship with Hashem. And then came the day that they entered a relationship with Hashem. So all this is to understand that the difference between Gan Eden HaTachton and Gan Eden HaElyon, one Gan Eden and the other Gan Eden, is so vast that the neshama has to let go of any kind of connection to Gashmis. Chinis HaMeisim, which is going to be so much greater, is Davke Begashmis. How does that make sense? In order to receive and perceive Gan Eden, it's impossible unless you let go of Gashmis, and you have to go through this process of forgetting. And in order to receive what's going to be revealed when there's Chinis HaMeisim, which is infinitely greater, not only Gashmis is not going to be a problem, your Davke is supposed to be Begashmis to receive that. How does that make sense? So let's finish up with these words again. Let's start with 5 lines from the end of the paragraph. The line begins with the word V'hainu. No, maybe one line before. V'afal PK, nevertheless, in order for the neshama to be able to absorb what's going to be revealed in the times of Chinis HaMeisim, it's specifically and precisely through the guf that will enable it to perceive this higher level of godliness. That means that one of the main differences that make the difference between Gan Eden and the times of Mashiach is in order to receive what's going to be revealed in Gan Eden, or the Apshata Midvarim Gashmi, is by letting go and divesting oneself from the Gashmis. Shekoidim Alis and Neshama the Gan Eden. That's why before the Neshama goes into Gan Eden, Tzarchli is Tchila Hatfila ben Nahar Dinar, has to immerse itself in this mikveh. And the purpose of the Shkoyach is a quote from the Zohar. The Shkoyach, to forget Chizu da Hayalma, to forget what this world looked like. And the same is in Gan Eden itself, when the Neshama goes higher and higher. For example, from one level of Gan Eden to a higher level of Gan Eden, it also goes through this mikveh. It has to forget about the way it looked at things in that perspective, and totally forget that lower Gan Eden, and then it could enter the higher Gan Eden. And here, in order to receive what's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes, is that they mishlabish beguf gashmi, dafka through a guf. How does that make sense? This is so much higher, so much greater, so much more spiritual, so much more abstract, so much more infinite, and yet the only way to receive it is dafka through and with the guf. I just want to say as another example, if you remember, I mentioned that I once heard from an older chassid of how when he was a young boy and started to learn Chassidus, so his teacher was trying to convey the message that Chassidus is a different way of thinking, a different way of understanding. And he said that, for example, if you walk over to a peasant and you want to explain him the difference between Chokhmah and Bina, they'll talk, they'll explain, and at the end they'll say, so which one is longer, Chokhmah or Bina? They say, no, it's not about longer and shorter. Chokhmah is like this and Bina is like that. So the next question would be, so which one's fatter? Next question would be, what color is it? Is it round or is it square? Because you can't think of any, if it's not round and not square, not long and not short, and if it's not big and skinny or fat, he doesn't know how, these are the dimensions that he can relate to. When you think about things that are not physical, like Chokhmah and Bina, you have to approach it from a whole different angle completely. Okay, Gimel. So all this is the question. From the beginning until this point is all the question. How is it that La'asad Lavai is so much higher and yet it's dafka with the guf? Being exib, it's written, Zeis Teres Ha'adam. It's a pasuk which actually is just talking about certain halachas, but the way the pasuk expresses itself is Zeis Teres Ha'adam. If you want to look this up, it's on page 19, pasuk Yud Dalet. I would suggest that you look at the pasuk to see the source. These are the laws regarding a person who dies in a tent. But being that it says Zeis Teres Ha'adam, just these three words, we derive from this that the Torah is like an Adam. The Torah is a mashal, the Torah is structured like a person. Which means just like a person consists of a guf and a neshama. Same as with Torah. Sheyesh b'guf and neshama. The Torah is the body of the Torah, the guf of Torah, and there's a neshama of Torah. What?
Can you repeat it?
That just like in the human body, a human being is made up of guf and neshama. So the Torah is structured the same way. That the Torah, the mivneh of Torah is there's a guf and there's a neshama. What are the two things in Torah? The chlalus, ha'chilik ben Torah le-mitzvahs. This is the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. There are mach mitzvahs, the 248 mitzvahs. Heim ramach evarim de malka. They're known as the 248 organs of the king. In other words, the mitzvahs are al derech evari haguf. So just like a person has 248 organs, the Torah also has 248 mitzvahs. So the Torah is like the guf, which is broken up into 248. That's mitzvahs. What about the Torah? The Torah is the part which is academic, the learning, the understanding, the logic, the intellect. Hu hadam, hu hanefesh. It says in Chumash that dam is the nefesh. The soul is in the blood. And in Torah, it means that just like a person has organs and has blood, the same is also with Torah. That the logic in Torah, the learning, the understanding, the explaining, that is the blood. Again, see the pasuk inside, page 20. It's talking about not being allowed to eat blood or drink blood. So it says, pasuk Chav Gimel, Chazak lebilti acher ladam. Do not eat the blood, ki adamu nefesh, because blood is life. So basically, this is guf and nefesh in Torah itself. This explains some of the differences that we find between learning Torah and observing mitzvahs. Now, of course, learning Torah is also a mitzvah, but now we're talking about learning Torah in itself, not as one of the mitzvahs. Just the idea that we're supposed to be learning and understanding all the mitzvahs and know where it comes from and why we do it, and what's the source in Torah and how we learn one thing from the other. Everything we learn about in Gemara or in Halacha, which is the logic, the understanding to the mitzvahs. This explains Zesha mitzvahs hem bizman u'makom. We see that mitzvahs are limited in time and space, which means all mitzvahs have a time when they can be observed and a place when they can be observed. It's not something which you can do anytime you want, at any place you want. So there's a mitzvah to eat matzah, it's only on Pesach. In Pesach itself, but it's a certain time, it's at night by the Seder. It doesn't apply to other days of the year. Shofar is on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah Shofar is only in itself, it's only by day, not by night. Same with tefillin, man puts on tefillin, it's by day. You light Shabbos candles, it's by day, before Shabbos, not allowed to light it in Shabbos. So mitzvahs have limitations, when you could do it, when you can do it. And then there's also mokkah, places where it could be done, not be done. So for example, a korban can only be brought in the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash itself, it's supposed to be brought on the Mizbeach. Certain things have to be done only in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Certain things have to be done in the home. Certain things have to be done in the shul. So mitzvahs are limited also in space. Generally, time and space, these two things are considered they define gevul, they define limitation. So mitzvahs are limited in time and space. Shalachin, but Torah is not limited in time and space. What does that mean? Shalachin kol ha'osek b'Torah soila. It says whoever engages and learns the laws of a korban oila, kilu hikruv oila. It's as if he brought a korban oila. Where is it? What does it mean, korban oila? Gam kishenim b'zman ha'makom ha'akrava. He's learning the laws of korban oila in the middle of the night. He's not in the Beis HaMikdash. He's somewhere in Chutz La'aretz. He's not a kohen. Every condition you need for a korban is not there. And yet, if he learns the laws of oila, it's as if he brought a korban oila. And of course, it applies to other things as well. So that means that Torah is not limited by time and space. There's also other examples. Torah is not limited. For example, all mitzvahs have a certain measurement. Matzah has to be a kazayas, a certain measurement. A lulav has to be a certain size. An esrog has to be a certain size. And shofar has to be a certain way. Everything is limited in the way it is. And it's the same for everybody. Torah is not the same for everybody. If you could learn a minute a day, you learn a minute a day. If you can learn 10 minutes, you can you can't fulfill your obligation by learning 1 minute. You have to learn 10 minutes. If you have time to learn for an hour a day, again, this is for a man, and he's obligated to learn for an hour. So it's something which is not limited the way all the other mitzvahs are limited. And there's no difference between day and night. You're supposed to be learning Torah by day, you're supposed to be learning Torah by night. And the limitations of time and space don't apply to Torah. And the reason is, ki agufu gashmi, because we said before, mitzvahs are like the guf of Torah, it's the body of Torah. And the guf is more limited. Mugdib is manamokim. Haneshama, hiruchnis, the soul is always the more spiritual one. And things that are spiritual is the mailim is manamokim. It's above time and space. So just like we make this difference within Torah mitzvahs, that Torah is more spiritual, mitzvahs are more physical, Torah is like the blood, mitzvahs are like the organs, Torah is like the neshama, and mitzvahs are like the guf. So this also will be expressed in the way Torah and mitzvahs are connected to a person. The person who learns Torah or the person who observes the mitzvahs, which means limud Torah, when you're learning Torah, shayach bikla neshama, even though it affects the whole person, but primarily it's connected to the neshama. Is the neshama of Torah connects to the neshama of the person. The kiyum mitzvahs, but when you observe a mitzvah, a physical act of a mitzvah, the haguf, that's more connected to the guf, to the physical body, because you can't observe mitzvahs without the physical body. So, therefore, what we understand from all this, we'll soon see how it all connects, is that Torah and mitzvahs is basically soul and body. And therefore, it affects us that way. The Torah has an impact on my soul more than anything else, and mitzvahs have an impact on my body more than anything else. So based on this, which is higher, Torah or mitzvahs? What does higher mean, by the way? More inches? Right, so which is higher, Torah or mitzvahs? You need both. Right, wait, before we answer the question, I asked another question. How do you define higher and lower? The Gashmis means if you're taller, if you're more inches, you're higher. Less inches, you're what? Higher means the source.
Which one Hashem wants more?
What?
Which one Hashem wants more?
Which one Hashem wants more? That's one way of measuring. True.
I'm a little confused.
Baruch Hashem. I always tell you, if you're only a little confused, you're very fortunate. Yeah.
What do you exactly mean? Like, can you differentiate more between like Torah and mitzvahs?
What the difference is?
Yeah, like the mitzvahs are.
Mitzvahs are practical things. Putting on film, putting up a mezuzah, what?
They're like a part of it. It's like a whole,
Like, what do you
it's
mean
like
when
a
you say
whole.
Torah?
I know, but I'm saying there's a question that comes before all the questions. What's the difference? So again, mitzvahs are practical acts. Performing a mitzvah means putting up a mezuzah, shaking the lulav and esrog, that's all. Torah is the learning, the academic part. Learning, understanding, where do we know this from? What does it say? The questions, the answers, the research, all the things that Torah scholars do. That's Torah. Everything is part of Torah, but here we're specifically talking about the academic part and the practical part.
So you're saying learning about a mitzvah versus like performing the mitzvah?
Yeah. But the whole Torah is learning about the mitzvahs. True.
Maybe mitzvahs.
What?
Maybe mitzvahs, because like then people, maybe they don't know that they're doing a mitzvah, but they're doing a mitzvah. And then it's maybe higher.
It's mitzvahs because
In that way, it's higher. So what does higher mean? So higher would mean like what Sarah just said, what's more what Hashem wants. Okay? But let me give you what?
In Gan Eden, their only occupation is learning Torah. All they're doing is learning Torah. For people for thousands of years, they're learning Torah.
Right.
So mitzvahs are higher because the greatest reward for them is to come back to this world to do mitzvahs.
Okay. So you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game. That's what he's going to explain. But on the surface, when you say higher or lower, when you're dealing with spiritual things, of course, what Hashem wants more, that makes it higher. That goes without saying. But the general definition, I'll ask you a different question, not related to mitzvahs. Which is higher, the Nefesh HaBahamis or the Guf? In terms of...
It's like everything in Chassidus, depends on which way you look at it, one's higher.
Yeah, of course, that's the general answer to all questions.
Like which holiday is the highest, whichever one's the
No,
lowest.
so I want to say
The
something.
Guf allows us to do mitzvahs.
We're going too far. Something more basic. The difference, the way we measure things higher or lower in general is things that are more abstract, which means less limited, that's higher. Things that are more concrete and more finite and more limited, that makes it lower. So for example, the Nefesh HaBahamis, the mere fact that it's something not physical, and the Guf is physical means Nefesh HaBahamis is higher. Intellect is higher than emotion because it's less limited than emotion. And the same thing with everything, even in the world of Klippa, things that are less limited, that means it's in a higher plane. Things that are more limited makes it in the lower plane. So Torah, we just finished learning, is less limited than mitzvahs. So on the surface, I would think Torah is higher. Mitzvahs are limited. You want to bring a carbon, you must be a Kohen. The animal must be a certain way. You must do it at a certain time. You must do it in a certain place. And all these limitations. With Torah, you're not limited. You can be whoever you are, any time of the day, any place in the world. You learn the laws, and it's as if you brought the carbon. So that's on the surface. The chiddush here is that actually is something about mitzvahs which make it superior to Torah. What is that? In Yedua, the way we know Torah mitzvahs is that mitzvahs are more limited and Torah is unlimited. So yes, Torah is higher. But in their source, in the root, mitzvahs ain't nailim yosef. This is common in Chassidus. As soon as you think one thing is higher than the other, wait a second, but up there where it's coming from, this is higher than that. What does it mean? Torah's source is Hashem's wisdom. What could be higher than Hashem's wisdom? Yeah, there is something higher than Hashem's wisdom. HaMitzvahs is Baruch. And Ratzon is L'mayla Chachma. Ratzon is higher than Chachma. So we can use the example within ourselves. I'll get to your question in a second. The highest faculty in a person is Chachma, is wisdom. But Ratzon, the willpower, is even higher than wisdom. Why? Higher than the intellect. How do I know? Who controls my intellect? What will determine what I will think, what I won't think, what I will learn, what I won't learn? I'll give an example. You're thinking about a certain subject, or you want to know the answer to a question. You think, and you get the answer. Now your brain is full of logic and has the answers to a million questions. How come this answer came out now, not a different answer? I'm thinking about the mimer. Why don't I get an answer on the mathematical problem? Who clicked? Which button on the computer do you click that makes only this thing come out now? Answer is Ratzon. It's the will. I want to know the answer to this question. So the will is the one that controls the Chachma. So clearly, will is higher than Chachma. In fact, there's a famous quote in Gemara, La'olam yilmed adam b'makom shalibei chafetz. A person should always learn Torah in a place that their heart desires. And what does it mean in a place? So of course, when you study Chassidus, this is even without Chassidus, there are two interpretations. One is physical. The person wants to study in this yeshiva or that yeshiva, choose the one that your heart is drawn to it. The other interpretation is that it's not the place, the physical location, geographically speaking, but the place meaning what subject. Let's say you have a certain feeling, you love learning about this subject more than the other subject, do that because that's what you enjoy. So it's explained in Chassidus why. Because the brain is controlled by the willpower, if it's a place where your will is more open and more satisfied, and then the wisdom and the chachma will be more functional, will be more successful. So the will controls the chokhmah. So Torah is Hashem's wisdom. Mitzvahs is Hashem's will. That means that the spiritual source and roots of mitzvahs is higher than the source of Torah. Yeah, Torah.
That was my one question about like, is it mitzvah and Torah or chokhmah? My other question is that like, when we study Torah, Hashem's like infinite wisdom becomes part of us. But when we do mitzvahs, we like bring Hashem into the world. So it makes sense why mitzvahs would be higher because we're like bringing Hashem into physical things and into the world rather than to just ourselves.
So you're right. The reason why mitzvahs can do that, can even penetrate Gashmis, is because it comes from a higher source.
Even like the shluchim that are in the streets, like with the tefillin and everything, and like giving shout schedules and stuff like that. It's all about the mitzvahs. It's not about like teaching people and like let's learn Torah, let's learn that.
Right. I mean, there is also a way of reaching people through learning the shiurim, but yes, through mitzvahs. And we see that when a person does a mitzvah, one mitzvah brings another mitzvah, and because a mitzvah is godly, it's something spiritual, and it has an effect on a person. So first we look at it and we say Torah is higher than mitzvahs because it's less limited. But in terms of the source, mitzvahs are higher than Torah. Same as the Gam Lach. So basically it works this way. Down here, the way it comes out in a revealed way, Torah is higher than mitzvahs. But if you look into the source where it's coming from, mitzvahs are higher than Torah. But there's really another detail to it. Even the way mitzvahs are revealed down here, we can also see a mila in mitzvahs over Torah. Why? So, yeah, this is what Chana said before. Torah, pirush ubira mitzvah. What is Torah? Torah is explaining the mitzvahs. So basically, mitzvahs are the main objective, and Torah is there to understand the mitzvahs. So even that expresses how Torah is sort of facilitating mitzvahs rather than mitzvahs facilitating Torah. The main thing is the mitzvahs, and the Torah is there to explain and understand how we're supposed to do the mitzvahs, why we do the mitzvahs this way or that way. So basically, here you are, back to what it says every place else in Chassidus, that there's a mila in Torah of a mitzvahs, there's a mila of mitzvahs of a Torah, and so far I explained these two things, and then he's going to explain how this also expresses in the neshama and the guf. To be continued. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi Majeski.
You're welcome.